Alex Palou has responded to questions about his IndyCar future and the talk about his dominance, opening doors for Formula One again and across all our great network shows. We've talked about Palou's historical season of dominance with 5 wins now in the first 6 races of the 2025 season, something we haven't seen since AJ Foyt in the 1960s. Palou is a three-time NTT IndyCar Series champion, and unless he gets injured or suffers a historic collapse, he's well on his way to a fourth IndyCar title. And and I know I said it on the wrap-up show, and Ben said it on the Encore show, among others, wondering if Palou might get a serious look from F1 teams. Palou previously served as a reserve driver for McLaren F1 before the legal drama involving McLaren. Chip Ganassi Racing himself left a stain on his image in F1 circles, and in an interview with Nathan Brown from the Indy Star, the newly crowned champion of the 109th Indy 500 said F1 isn't calling him anymore, and noted how the culture is different over there compared to IndyCar. He mentioned how you don't see people celebrate with their wives and kids as much as they do in any car or hanging out in the bus lot and having dinner with the mechanics. And for anyone worrying about Palou leaving IndyCar for F1 anytime soon, he says he doesn't want to leave now and wants to get another Indy 500 win. And our own Jackson Lambros brought up how Brendan Hartley made the wrong choice by turning down a Ganassi seat and going to F1 instead. Link to this interview in the video description below and photo taken by Joe Skabinski from Penske Entertainment. Matt, how reassuring is it for IndyCar to hear that Palou has strong feelings about staying in the series long term?
Well, for the series and the people that run the series, it's great for them to keep one of their stars. We don't, this series is, of course, with Villeneuve, Zanardi, Montoya, those kind of names going off to F1. I listened to last week's F1 Beyond the Grid podcast, which was with Dario Franchitti. Listened to that today, and he was talking about all his opportunities he had to go to Formula One. Could you imagine if Dario had joined Jaguar at the beginning of the 2000s and not had all those Indy 500 wins and championships? He was kind of the last dominant guy of that kind of era, wasn't it? From where he could have not had any of that. And then Palou has said, he wants to stay and win a couple more Indy 500s and a few more championships and cement his legacy in the States rather than go and run for 15th place in Formula One, which if he was to join a midfield team, an Aston Martin, an Alpine, he's not going to join Racing Bulls, is he? But you know what I mean, that kind of a team, then, that's kind of the end of his, career. We've seen how people go to F1, don't perform and get chucked out to dry and find themselves probably in sports cars or something like that. 1.16 is his average finish for the season so far this year. It's absolutely incredible what he's done. And it's Alex Palou's world and we're just living in it.
Yeah, and it looks like we're going to be living in a Palou world for the foreseeable future. And you mentioned how some people go to F1 and get spit out. We saw Brendan Hartley, as Jackson mentioned in one of our private chats. Well, Brendan, he was a rising star, in sports car racing for quite a while before he got that opportunity to drive for the team, now known as Racing Bulls. Yeah, Brendan, starred in sports cars, and it was surprising, that when Red Bull called him back up because he was previously a Red Bull junior driver, then got dropped and started to have a great career in sports cars, and then got the F1 opportunity. And it was actually reported that he had signed, with Chip Ganassi Racing to ironically drive that number 10 car at the time. But, there was a clause in the IndyCar contract, which was smart on Brendan's end if he wanted the option. It was the fact if an F1 team come calling, he could easily, get out of that contract. And, Red Bull wanted to bring him back, put him in that Toro Rosso seat at the time. And then, Brendan had his go in F1, did not go well, and then ended up back in sports cars. Now, been with Toyota Gazoo Racing and, still, at the top of his game in sports cars. But, yeah, it can go horribly wrong. And for Alex Palou, given the historic season that he's having right now and that the team he's with, if he were to leave for Formula One, there's no guarantee, that if he were to, let's say, come back maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now in IndyCar, there's no guarantee that he'd be at the same level. And the number 10 team right now, that's a special group. And I think you need to do everything you can to keep that group together for as long as you can, because they have all the right people in the right places and everything is clicking, at every single possible angle, even the smallest details, it's just going right to a T. And I think if you keep this group together, for as long as you can, Alex Palou's dominant run, can continue. He can potentially become the Jimmy Johnson of IndyCar, where he could win a lot more championships, maybe multiple, maybe could, go on a run, maybe win two, three, four, or even, five championships in a row. I would be shocked to see that in IndyCar, but sky's the limit for Palou and his number 10 team. And I think that he's making the right decision, being like, hey, I want to stay in IndyCar. I want to make this my home because right now, given how strong he's running, he could potentially end up being one of the all-time great drivers in the history of the IndyCar series. Could be right up there on Mount Rushmore with the great Mario Andretti and AJ Foyt as one of the best we have ever seen. So I think that it's the right call for him to stay in IndyCar with Chip Ganassi Racing because things are going all so well. I just wonder how different his future would be if he'd ended up driving for the McLaren team in IndyCar. I have a feeling he wouldn't be seeing this same type of success because Ganassi and Palou, the number 10 team, Barry Wanzer, his strategies, it seemed like it's just all aligning there for a great run. And Adam in the chat says Alex Palou also threw out the first pitch at the New York Mets game as well. Yes, I believe I saw that on the socials last night, and also got to visit the Empire State Building and go to the very top as well, which is tradition for the Indy 500 winner. And then Joe says F1 is not promising. Really, maybe only if Red Bull loses Max and after Hamilton leaves Ferrari, but if not a top ride, you don't see it worth it. Yeah, I know some people, even I know Ben said that wonder if Cadillac will take a look at him, since the American audience is familiar with Alex Palou, if you're not going to get a so-called American driver. But, Cadillac's going to be a new team in F1, no guarantee in how they're going to perform. I assume they would probably be running 21st and 22nd, given the fact that it's a new team. But is it really worth leaving IndyCar where you're the top dog, best, you're driving for one of the best car owners, best team out on the grid, and like, would you really rather go to Formula One where you're running dead last and don't finish in the points at all throughout the year, more than likely, versus, going out there being the guy that everyone's going to be chasing every race weekend?
Yeah, we had the same discussion in the USRN chat this week about Cadillac. That's if he's going to go, that's probably his last chance. But he seems to have waved it off. I said post race on our call of the race on USRN. You think back to when Dario got injured and had to leave the 10 team. There was that cycle through of drivers they had trying to find the guy to replace Dario. We had Ed Jones in there, Felix Rosenquist, perhaps Brendan Hartley, as you talked about, coming. It didn't happen. Now they've got their guy with Palou, and look what's happened. They've just gone absolutely from strength to strength. And it's going to be up to the other teams to try and stop them. In a spec series, you shouldn't really have someone doing this kind of thing this regularly. So again, now we're out of the 500. We'll see what happens for the rest of the season. But he's already further ahead of second in the championship standings than second is ahead of 10th. So there's a lot of catching up for the rest of the field to do for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think I saw something yesterday on social media, with the updated points showing that the same distance, Alex Palou is over to Pato O'Ward in second. Pato O'Ward is the same amount, is the same distance ahead of his teammate Nolan Siegel, who's like way down in the point standing. So it just shows you how dominant Alex Palou is. Just been totally incredible to see what this guy is doing. And the rest of the field, I'm sure they're not going to be happy to see that he's going to be standing in IndyCar long term because they're going to have to try to beat this guy in Mad. I never thought I'd ever see the day when we would see someone at Chip Ganassi Racing, become the number one driver, not named Scott Dixon, while he's still in the sport. I thought Scott Dixon was going to be the number one driver forever until he decided to retire. But now I think Scott Dixon, he's still competing at a high level, but I think it's safe to say Alex Palou is the number one driver of that team, and Scott Dixon is kind of, slipped back to number two, and like this veteran mentorship like role, because this is Alex Palou's team anymore. It's no longer Scott Dixon's team.
Yeah, and we saw a little bit, didn't we, on the race on Sunday? We saw the Andretti curse rear its head again with Marco having his crash on the first lap. And then Scott Dixon's unlucky streak at the 500 continued with the brake issue, which ruled them out for the day. So another disappointment in May for Dixon, whereas yet again, here goes his teammate off and wins the race. This time it was the 500. So, yeah, you're right. It looked like it was going to be Dixon's team forever, but they found their number A+ replacement, haven't they? Or team leader now with Alex Palou.